Welcome to Tomorrow Unveiled. Today, we are diving deep into a massive stack of sources. And they really confirm we're not just witnessing technological change. We seem to be navigating a fundamental societal restructuring. This shift, it's redefining what it means to work, how we learn, and, the very foundations of economic stability.
It's quite a collection. The research team that compiled this information, they've given us a really comprehensive view of this inflection point we're at. And the overwhelming consensus, it seems, is that AI is creating just unprecedented productivity potential, leading to what some of these sources are calling abundance-oriented economic structures, which sounds great. However, and this is a big however, that potential is entirely conditional. It depends on how we manage the, frankly, profound inequalities and skill gaps that threaten to leave a lot of people behind.
Absolutely. And the narrative has shifted so dramatically, hasn't it? Gone is that widespread kind of fear-driven focus on machines replacing humans entirely. It's been replaced by a much more nuanced view, this idea of hybrid collaboration. So our mission here on Tomorrow Unveiled in this deep dive is really to unpack the most surprising and consistent findings about this societal shift. We need to analyze the economic paradoxes that are driving market behavior right now and explore the concrete steps institutions worldwide are taking right now to future-proof society for you, the listener.
Yeah, what's truly fascinating is just the sheer weight of evidence pointing toward augmentation, not elimination. We are looking at society accelerating toward a fundamentally different relationship with labor. And like you said, this isn't about minor adjustments. It feels more like a complete rewiring of the global workforce. And that really needs to be addressed proactively.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start by examining how our jobs are fundamentally changing. We should explore the data that kind of busts the automation myth. And then we can move on to those huge questions around economic sustainability and the future of education, which seems mandatory at this point.
Right. So the big question everyone still asks, often with, real anxiety, is will AI take my job?
Okay.
The sources our research team compiled suggest the answer for, well, the vast majority is a pretty firm no, but it will fundamentally change it. The data strongly suggests we are accelerating toward a fundamentally different relationship with work itself.
Yeah, and it's absolutely critical to understand the true scope of this transformation versus maybe the fear-mongering we saw in earlier headlines. Based on detailed analysis looking at millions of existing jobs, our dedicated research team finds that roughly 80% of jobs are experiencing significant transformation. That's a huge number. It basically means almost every sector is going to look different in, say, a decade, 80%. But let's zoom in on the nuance there, because transformation can mean a lot of things. The consensus seems to be it's moderate and manageable for most people.
That's the key distinction, exactly. Within that 80%, the sources show that 54% of jobs experience moderate transformation. So tasks change, skills definitely need updating, but the core role and the human worker, they remain central. And crucially, get this, only 1% of jobs qualifies for complete automation.
1%. Okay, when you realize that means 99% of workers aren't facing total obsolescence, that feels revolutionary. It completely rewrites those, doomsday predictions we heard a few years back. But if only 1% of jobs are completely automated, why do our sources show public anxiety is still so high? Is it just that the media coverage is misaligned with the data?
I think the anxiety often comes from not quite understanding the mechanism of the change. People tend to confuse task automation with job automation. AI is exceptional at automating specific, often routine tasks within a job, and that leads us directly to what the reports are calling the hybrid model. Nearly half of all job skills, that's a massive percentage, are moving into what's termed hybrid transformation.
Okay, so paint a picture for us. What does that look like in practice? If AI handles the routine tasks, the sort of grunt work, what are human workers actually left to do?
Well, the human role becomes kind of elevated, you could say. It shifts to one of direction and, crucially, a value add. Workers provide the essential oversight, the creativity to apply whatever the AI outputs, the strategic judgment to handle edge cases or complex situations, and really importantly, ethical compliance. Think of like an AI writing assistant. It drafts the email super quickly, right? But the human edits the tone, verifies the facts, makes sure it aligns with company policy or the specific context. We're shifting from doing the manual, repetitive work to directing the, frankly, sophisticated work of the AI.
I really like that framing. Directing the work of AI. That makes sense. So, okay, if we accept this hybrid reality, what does this structural reshaping mean for long-term career planning? The analysts, they suggest we're moving towards something called a barbell labor market.
Exactly. Yeah, picture a barbell, right? Weight on both ends, thin in the middle, that thin middle part. Those are the routine middle skill cognitive jobs. They're most at risk. Things like simple data entry, basic research analysis, standard administrative functions. Because these roles rely heavily on predictable patterns and data processing, they are highly susceptible to automation. These roles are definitely being squeezed by efficiency gains.
Okay, squeezed in the middle. But the poles of that barbell, those two heavy weights, that's where the opportunity is really flourishing.
Yeah.
Right? Demand is increasing dramatically at both ends. So on the highly skilled heavyweight side, you have the emergence of the AI directors. Tell us about them.
Right. These are the highly skilled knowledge workers who manage, who validate, and strategically deploy these, massive AI systems. They're the prompt engineers we hear about, yes, but also the model validators, the people responsible for making sure the AI is actually solving the right business problem effectively and safely. And this requires more system thinking, cross-functional expertise. It's moving beyond just narrow technical specialization.
Okay, so that's one end. And on the other side, the second heavyweight pole, you have the human touch roles. These are the jobs that leverage those essentially human capabilities, right?
Yeah.
Manual dexterity, nuanced emotional intelligence, complex face-to-face communication.
Exactly. And these roles are incredibly difficult to automate because they rely so much on context, empathy, and that human connection. Think about skilled trades, plumbers, electricians. Think about roles in hospitality or care work like nursing. The research team specifically highlighted nursing. It remains primarily human-centered, with only about 32% of its skills potentially affected by AI. Why? Because that human connection, the empathy, the dexterity needed for, say, a medical procedure, the moral judgment, you just can't effectively automate that away. Not yet, anyway. Maybe never.
And this transformation, it isn't just shifting existing roles, it's actually creating entirely new categories of work, things that were basically science fiction a decade ago.
Yeah.
Our research shows some massive projections for this new ecosystem.
Oh, the numbers are staggering, really. Projections indicate the emergence of something like 12 million AI implementation and management positions by 2030. That's an entirely new layer of IT and strategy needed globally. And maybe even more striking, the demand for 8 million roles dedicated entirely to AI safety and ethics. This is like a whole new regulatory and quality control industry being built from scratch just to ensure these powerful tools are safe, fair, and used responsibly.
That's a lot of job creation. A lot. And if we look beyond just the jobs themselves for a second, let's talk about the payoff for the workers who actually adopt these tools, the productivity dividend.
Right. Workers who are already using generative AI tools, they're reporting significant time savings. The research suggests, on average, about a 5.4% time saving on routine tasks. And across organizations, that adds up to about a 1.1% aggregate productivity increase.
Okay, 1.1% aggregate productivity increase. That might sound small to an individual worker, maybe. But when you scale that across a whole global economy, that's a monumental amount of economic lift, isn't it? This must be where the micro-level change starts influencing macro-level policy.
Absolutely. And that jump in efficiency, it's fueling discussion about something many people are, dreaming about, a shorter work week. Insights from major tech leadership, they're predicting that the efficiency gains delivered by AI agents could actually make a 3 or even 4-day work week viable, perhaps in the near future. I mean, if AI handles that 5.4% of your tasks that are just pure drudgery, the focus genuinely shifts from just raw hours worked to the quality and strategic impact of those hours. It's the promise, really, of using technology to enhance human flourishing and, work-life balance.
So we have this micro-productivity gain, right? That 5.4% time saving in our weekly tasks. But what does that small individual gain actually translate to when you scale it across the entire economy? And that brings us to this promise of abundance you mentioned earlier.
Right.
The economic rationale for the current AI investment frenzy is enormous precisely because of that potential scale. Analysts are projecting AI will lead to a permanent increase in economic activity, boosting global GDP by 1.5% by 2035 and nearly 3% by 2055. This is the core engine of what they're calling abundance economics, basically using hyper-efficiency to create net new value faster than it might displace existing value.
And we aren't just waiting for 2035 to see these theoretical models in action, are we? Our sources point to some small-scale government initiatives that are already providing some concrete evidence supporting this abundance model.
Yeah, exactly. Look at the results from Ireland's basic income for the arts program. Now, this isn't universal basic income, UBI, but it provides a guaranteed income floor specifically for artists. The analysis showed it generated a concrete 1.39 return for every €1 invested. That's through economic activity, cultural output, improved well-being. It demonstrates that this kind of non-traditional economic support, maybe powered by societal productivity gains, can indeed yield real societal benefits and returns.
And we're seeing that thinking expand geographically too, which indicates maybe a global policy shift is underway. Thailand, for example, has announced a potential negative income tax by 2027, explicitly designed to combat poverty by ensuring an income floor for citizens. These policy examples seem to be directly engaging with the idea that, okay, if we have higher productivity, we must fundamentally rethink how wealth and opportunity are distributed, or risk serious social fracture.
It's exciting stuff, definitely.
Yeah.
But here's where we have to pump the brakes a bit. We have to talk about the disconnect between the hype and the current economic reality. There's a massive investment paradox happening right now.
Okay, tell us more about this paradox. Where's the gap between that promise of abundance and the current market reality?
Well, the thing is, current economic resilience, especially in major advanced economies, it seems to be largely driven not by realized productivity gains spreading through the broader economy just yet. I mean, your average local restaurant or accountant probably isn't 50% faster today because of AI, right? Instead, the growth is coming from parabolic, that's the word used, capital expenditure on the physical infrastructure of AI. We're talking unprecedented spending on building enormous data centers, securing specialized GPUs, expanding electrical grids just to handle the massive computational load.
Okay, so it sounds like we're measuring growth fueled by building the capacity for future AI, not the widespread economic impact of its application yet. It's like the difference between investing billions to construct a massive, sophisticated highway and measuring the economic growth before any cars actually start driving on it. Is that a fair analogy?
That's a great analogy. Precisely. And financial markets, they seem to be showing a lot of caution about this time gap. This is a really critical observation from the sources. Major AI breakthroughs, when announced, are consistently followed by declines in long-term treasury yields. Now, this is a bit of a sober, subtle market signal, but it's profoundly important.
Okay, why are those long-term bond yields the indicator? Explain why the bond market specifically is reacting that way. What's it telling us?
Well, the bond market is essentially betting against a rapid, high, society-altering productivity boom leading to inflation, at least in the short to medium term. When those long-term yields fall, it means major investors are signaling they don't believe AI will immediately translate into a massive disruptive mega boom that raises baseline inflation through, say, explosive demand. They seem to see the current growth as concentrated infrastructure spending, not yet diffuse economic output rippling through everything. And this raises critical questions about the sustainability of the current trajectory. And the very real risk of an investment bubble centered on AI infrastructure,
Yeah.
especially if those realized productivity gains lag for too long behind the spending.
Right. That infrastructure investment boom has to level off eventually. And if it does, and the wide-scale productivity hasn't fully materialized yet, well, the air could come out of the market pretty fast.
Which brings us back to a really important question. Who benefits from this abundance, whether it's realized now or just promised for the future? And this is perhaps the greatest challenge to an equitable transformation. Currently, the benefits are concentrating. They're creating profound geographic and demographic gaps. High-income countries are capturing disproportionate productivity gains already. Our research team found a really striking example, Singapore. It achieved 4.57 times the global average AI usage. That kind of concentration risks leaving developing economies entirely behind, potentially turning the wealth gap into an insurmountable technology gap.
And then we have the pervasive issue of equity within the workforce, specifically the gender gap. The data seems pretty stark there. Women's jobs are disproportionately threatened by automation.
Yes. Analysts estimate that about 28% of female-held roles are at high risk of displacement or significant disruption. Compare that to 21% of male-held roles. Now, this disparity isn't inherently based on gender itself, but on existing workplace structures. Women are historically overrepresented in those middle-skill, routine cognitive jobs, things like clerical work, data entry, standard administrative roles, and those are precisely the roles most susceptible to automation right now, right across the economy. Addressing this needs really targeted reskilling efforts.
And underpinning all of this, the geographical gap, the gender gap, the market paradox, is the human factor. what the reports call the skills gap threat.
Yeah, the primary barrier to a smooth, equitable transition, it isn't technological, fundamentally. It's human adaptability. The reports warn that up to 40% of the skills required for any given job are expected to change by 2030. The most significant near-term risk for organizations isn't that the technology will fail, it's that, and I'm quoting here, employees may not adapt or upskill quickly enough.
So what specific new skills are needed then? Are we talking about everyone needing to learn how to write Python code? Or is it more about things like ethical framework design and strategic communication, the director skills you mentioned?
It's much more about the latter, I think. It's that shift from task specialization to more cross-functional oversight.
Mhm.
The new skills are centered on human AI collaboration, things like prompt engineering, yes, that's part of it, but also critical thinking to actually validate AI outputs, complex problem solving for scenarios AI just can't handle,
Yeah.
and really understanding the ethical guardrails of the system you're directing.
That transition from specialist to director,
Yeah.
that requires a massive retraining effort, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And if we connect this back to the abundance promise, that transition must be managed through proactive policy. Otherwise, the efficiency gains will just accrue to those who already possess the high-level skills, widening that economic chasm even further.
It's a lot to think about, these big economic shifts. And actually, we love hearing your thoughts on this complex topic. Whether you're on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, maybe leave a comment and let us know what you think. What about the potential for an AI-driven abundance economy versus these risks of bubbles and inequality? How is your own job changing right now? We're curious. If you're finding this insightful on YouTube, please take just a moment to like this video, subscribe to Tomorrow Unveiled, maybe consider hitting that new hype button. It really helps us reach more viewers. And of course, be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss an update on the future. Okay, so moving from the economic paradox to the classroom. The education sector is clearly grappling with both the immediate challenge of adapting its systems and this immense responsibility of preparing the next generation for that barbell labor market we just discussed. We're seeing a really rapid shift from just basic experimentation with AI to, well, serious scaled implementation.
Definitely. And the focus seems squarely on accelerating personalized learning. The tools are becoming incredibly sophisticated. They're moving toward AI-assisted pathways that can adapt to the individual learner, often in real time.
How does that real-time adaptation actually work? How does it manifest in a learning environment for a student?
Well, platforms are leveraging AI to provide things like on-demand tutoring that adjusts difficulty based on immediate student performance. It sort of mimics the one-on-one attention of a really good human tutor. They're even being used to try and reduce student cognitive fatigue in real time by adjusting the content load and delivery style. One pilot actually demonstrated a 37% improvement in student retention and focus when AI dynamically managed the learning pace. So it's really about efficiency and knowledge transfer, ensuring the student is always challenged, but hopefully never overwhelmed.
We're also seeing a trend toward microcredentialing and skills-based learning gaining real institutional momentum. This feels like a direct response to that 40% skill change forecast we talked about.
It absolutely is. Some new systems are implementing things like 8 to 12 stackable credentials as standard formats. It accelerates skills-based learning and makes the whole system much more modular, more adaptable to the fluid demands of the workforce. So if a specific industry skill is suddenly needed, a student or worker could quickly complete a targeted certified module rather than, waiting years for a whole degree program to be overhauled.
Okay, but there seems to be a key caution emerging from the early evidence about this hybrid learning model. It kind of reinforces the necessity of the human element, even education, right?
Absolutely. The data shows that students, they preferred AI reading assistants for simplifying complex material. That's a great augmentation tool for dense texts. But when these same students relied on AI alone, maybe bypassing traditional study methods or instructor guidance, they actually achieved significantly worse exam results. So again, it reinforces our core theme here. AI is a powerful assistant, a great tool, but the human effort, the struggle, the critical fixing, the judgment of the instructor, that remains paramount for deep learning and genuine critical retention.
This immediately raises a really important and maybe difficult ethical question. Can an AI-powered education system designed for this kind of high-level personalization actually be equitable? The answer currently seems to be a resounding no, largely due to the stubborn global digital divides that still exist.
The statistics here are a really stark warning. Failure to act could doom global equity efforts in the long run. Nearly 1/3 of the world's population, that's 2.6 billion people, still lack basic internet access. And at the institutional level, globally, only about 40% of primary schools have an internet connection. It's only 65% for upper secondary schools.
Wow. So without coordinated, massive intervention into just basic infrastructure,
Yeah.
this guarantees a devastating two-tier system risk, doesn't it? You create a connected tier of students benefiting from sophisticated AI-augmented learning, essentially future-proofing their entire population. And then you have an unconnected tier falling further and further behind with every passing year, guaranteeing their exclusion from the future. Digitized economy. Education could become the primary driver of future socioeconomic inequality if this access gap isn't closed immediately.
It's a massive challenge. The good news, perhaps, is that governance is beginning to catch up to the technology. Governments are starting to respond with more comprehensive governance frameworks. They're focused on rights, privacy, ethics, acknowledging that these AI systems are definitely not neutral actors.
We're seeing policy moving pretty fast, both domestically and internationally. The U.S. Department of Education guidance, for instance, specifically affirms that federal grant funds can be used for responsible AI integration, but with a really strong focus on privacy protection and piloting effective high-impact tutoring programs.
And we see comprehensive planning happening at the state level, too. California, for example, has established a statewide AI and education work group. Their job is to proactively develop policy and ethical standards, tackling concerns like algorithmic bias and data usage before these tools are just deployed everywhere without checks.
Meanwhile, on the international stage, UNESCO is calling for a rights-based approach. It's centered on 5 pillars: coordination, content, capacity, connectivity, and cost. This feels like a global acknowledgement that we have to protect learners' rights and ensure technology enhances, not endangers, education, especially for vulnerable populations.
And finally, to truly future-proof students for this new world, the curriculum itself has to undergo a pretty radical shift. It needs to move away from the kind of memorization tasks that AI actually excels at. The research compiled by our research team suggests an urgent prioritization of uniquely human skills.
Okay, so what are those key human skills that AI, at least for now, can't replicate effectively?
They're essentially the skills required for that AI director poll of the barbell we talked about: critical thinking, creativity, emotional intelligence, complex problem solving. This means education has to emphasize things like scenario analysis, collaborative projects, ethical reasoning, not just filling in bubbles on a multiple choice test.
And crucially, this has to be paired with mandatory AI literacy and fundamentals, right, from K-12 systems onwards. I mean, if you don't understand how large language models are trained, what their limitations are, how they're reshaping 80% of jobs, you're essentially starting your career at a massive systemic disadvantage in this new economy. Okay, so beyond education, governments are focusing intensely on international coordination, but also on securing competitive advantage. It's a bit of a balancing act. We're seeing robust policy frameworks emerging globally to try and govern this enormous transition.
Yeah, international governance is really key because AI doesn't respect borders, does it? The OECD has established some landmark principles for trustworthy AI governance in government itself, focusing on high-benefit, low-risk approaches, demanding transparency, accountability, and strong cross-border collaboration for things like data sharing and model validation.
And the G7, they seem to be moving quickly too, trying to advance consensus standards for interoperability and accountability. Recognizing, I suppose, that fragmented national standards would just cripple global innovation and risk creating these massive competitive gaps between nations.
Right. And then on the national competition front, you see things like the U.S. unveiling its Winning the Race, America's AI Action Plan. This is framed as a whole-of-government approach. It's focused on accelerating innovation, yes, but also infrastructure build-out, including, maybe controversially, things like streamlining data center, permitting to accelerate that physical capacity we discussed earlier. And this strategy is already in action. The GSA, for instance, is partnering to provide advanced AI models to federal agencies at a nominal cost, just to rapidly accelerate government adoption and efficiency.
Now, a core consensus across pretty much all our sources is the desperate need for a comprehensive, worker-centric policy roadmap, something to manage the transition fairly. This seems to mean moving beyond basic, maybe outdated safety nets to more proactive measures, treating displaced workers as valuable assets who need retraining, not just support.
Exactly. Policy analysis suggests a kind of four-pillar approach to worker support is needed, essentially forming a new social contract, if you will, designed for the pace of AI disruption.
Okay, let's break those down. Let's start with the first pillar, workforce development.
Right. This requires a massive structural overhaul of how we think about skills and learning. It means embedding AI literacy everywhere, yes, but also expanding funding models like income share agreements or ISAs for lifelong learning. ISAs, just briefly, allow a worker to get job training now without massive upfront costs. They pay back a percentage of their future income, but only once they secure a job above a certain threshold. This drastically lowers the financial risk for individuals wanting to upskill or reskill.
Okay, that makes sense. The second pillar addresses social safety nets, and this is where policy needs to become automated itself, implementing automatic stabilizers.
Yes, automatic stabilizers are crucial because they aim to remove the political delay that often happens. These are support measures, think unemployment insurance, maybe wage insurance programs that are designed to scale up and down automatically, based on predefined real-time economic indicators like regional unemployment spikes hitting a certain level or specific wage stagnation metrics being triggered. The idea is to provide rapid, timely support the moment disruption hits a community rather than waiting months or years for legislation.
Got it. Third is regional equity. We know AI growth tends to cluster wealth in major tech centers, which exacerbates those urban-rural and coastal-inland divides.
So policy has to actively counteract this, using what are called place-based policies, maybe modeled on programs like the Tech Hubs initiative. These programs strategically invest federal dollars or national funds in emerging technology ecosystems outside the major metropolitan areas, providing grants, infrastructure support, trying to ensure the economic benefits are more broadly distributed, creating resilient regional economies rather than concentrating all the new wealth in just a handful of already wealthy coastal cities.
And finally, the fourth pillar. This seems to be about comprehensive support systems.
Yeah, advocating for things like tax credits, maybe subsidized jobs, to help workers who are facing job loss or significant wage stagnation directly due to technological disruption, ensuring they have a supported, clear on-ramp back into the new hybrid economy.
This whole policy framework feels essential. Because companies, too, they seem to be recognizing that their success really hinges on their existing employees, doesn't it? The imperative for business leaders seems to be shifting towards investing in human-AI collaboration models, rather than just pure, maybe short-sighted automation for cost-cutting.
Exactly. Which leads to the immediate focus for, well, corporate America and global business, really, the reskilling imperative.
Right.
Corporations simply must develop comprehensive reskilling programs for their existing workforces to turn employees into assets to be enhanced, not just costs to be automated away. The successful models seem to emphasize internal mobility training current employees to manage and leverage AI tools rather than just trying to hire entirely new, very expensive AI director talent externally. Furthermore, there's growing momentum, interestingly, toward corporate profit sharing and shared capitalism models, trying to ensure those productivity gains actually benefit the broad population rather than just concentrating wealth further in the hands of shareholders and a few top executives.
Okay, so to show you, the listener, the immediate real-world impact of this augmentation strategy, let's look quickly at three sectors where we're already seeing some quick wins and practical applications today.
Sounds good. First, let's take healthcare. AI is moving rapidly from just pure research into the front lines of actual patient care. In stroke centers, for instance, AI tools are analyzing CT scans almost instantly. They often shave crucial minutes off the diagnosis time compared to human-only analysis, dramatically speeding up the decision to begin life-saving treatment.
But the immediate impact on the daily lives of doctors and nurses might be even greater. Tell us about these co-pilots.
Right. These AI-powered co-pilots are starting to automate the creation of clinical notes directly from patient conversations. Using ambient listening technology and natural language processing, the AI captures the complex conversation and generates structured, compliant clinical documentation, often in real time. This frees up physicians from hours and hours of late-night paperwork, which we know is a key driver of physician burnout, allowing them to focus more purely on patient interaction and complex diagnosis.
That's huge. Okay, second sector, finance. In global markets, AI seems paramount for speed, security, and accuracy.
Oh, absolutely. AI systems now scan over 125 billion transactions annually just for fraud detection. And these systems look beyond just simple anomalies. They analyze complex behavioral patterns, catching sophisticated identity theft and market manipulation far faster than traditional methods ever could. And this trend is accelerating right across the sector. Something like 91% of financial firms are planning to use AI in portfolio construction and risk management by 2025.
Wow, 91%. Okay, and third, let's look at agriculture. This seems like a great example of AI helping with sustainability and operational efficiency, maybe in a traditionally lower tech sector.
Exactly. AI-powered drones are now monitoring crop health, soil composition, moisture levels across massive fields. They collect incredibly detailed hyperlocal data, which is then fed into an AI model. The AI then generates more accurate, precise irrigation recommendations. And this has already been shown in some cases to lead to a 20% reduction in water usage, which is a really tangible step toward achieving global sustainable development goals while also potentially improving crop yield and efficiency for farmers. Hashtag tag outro. So the core takeaway from this really extensive deep dive on Tomorrow Unveiled seems pretty clear. The future of work is, well, irrevocably hybrid. And this transition demands augmentation strategies over simple elimination. It places the highest, really non-negotiable value on uniquely human skills, creativity, critical thinking, empathy, judgment.
Right. And while the economic potential is massive, we're talking projections of abundance, unprecedented GDP growth, we absolutely have to navigate a major paradox. Current market resilience seems largely infrastructure-driven and concentrated. It's not yet reflective of realized productivity gains right across the board. And we face severe, measurable risks of deepening existing inequalities, geographic, gender, skills-based, if we don't act decisively right now.
Yeah, success really depends entirely on proactive, coordinated governance. Designing smart, adaptive social safety nets, like those automatic stabilizers we mentioned, investing heavily in digital and educational infrastructure to close that global divide, and urgently prioritizing AI literacy and education for all citizens, not just a select few.
Ultimately, this transition, it's not merely a technological challenge, is it? It's fundamentally a social and political one. The convergence of AI productivity gains and these proven ideas around abundance economics suggest that humanity might actually stand at the threshold of a post-scarcity society, one defined perhaps by shorter work weeks and a higher quality of life for more people. But the next decade, it won't be determined solely by AI's capabilities. It'll be determined by whether the abundance it generates becomes broadly shared, or if it gets concentrated among a privileged few who already possess the requisite skills and capital. So the provocative thought for you is, what deliberate choices will you make in your life, your work, your community to ensure technology serves human flourishing? We really hope this deep dive into FutureProofed has given you some valuable insight into the path ahead, whether you're planning your own career, guiding an organization, or maybe even shaping policy. And again, we love hearing your thoughts. Whether you're on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, please leave a comment. Let us know what you think about AI's role in future-proofing society. Do you think those 4 pillars of worker support are actually politically feasible? We'd love to know. Also, if you happen to be listening on a podcast service like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, we'd be incredibly grateful if you could leave us a rating and perhaps a review for Tomorrow Unveiled. It truly does help us reach new listeners and continue to provide these detailed breakdowns. Thank you so much for joining us on Tomorrow Unveiled. We'll catch you next time for another deep dive.